drafted image. Best thing you can do is let's look at the image size of the main character you want to bring in, no matter if it's the top model or the giraffe, right? So let's go in and say image size, and in inches is about 11 by 17, is really high res. The problem with high res is when you're trying to turn it in, it's going to take a lot of time, right? And some of you, I don't know if you remember 182, you had to turn things in, and it was a final, and I had students at the very last minute coming to me, basically texting me saying, I'm panicking here. Because Canvas kept spinning. You know what I mean? They put it in the Canvas thing, but then it seems like it was not really uploading it, or it was taking forever. So unless you need 300, I would reduce it to 150. As simple as that. And then I'm going to say, okay. Again, if you, instead of the top model, you want to use the giraffe, no biggie, same story. Oh my God, look how big this is. Oh, I'm glad I opened the giraffe so I can show you another trick. So it is really big, but the resolution is not very high. And because the inches size is so big, I can do what I taught you in 182. I call it tango. Do a little tango between the resolution and the width and height size. So if I uncheck this, and I type 150 in there, pay attention to what the 33 inches by 50 inches become, right? I'm doubling the image and in resolution, and I'm cutting in half the inches of size. So if you do that, you do not lose any quality. So doing this little tangoing, this little dance, is the best thing you can do if you ever find yourself that you need to increase the resolution, is to compromise by saying, okay, I'm going to get that inches down, but at least I have it at 150 that is really nice and printable. So now it's still pretty big though, right? So I'm going to check back this, because that way right now I'm content with the resolution, and if I have it unchecked, whatever I change up here, it changes down here, right? When you have this resample unchecked, the two, resolution and height and width, the three actually, affect each other. But if you go in and lock it up, the resolution is good, and now I'm going to say, hey, the height is too much. Again, I'm making too big of a file size. So I'm going to type 17. So now we have the 11 by 17 tabloid that we need. And I'm going to say, okay. So now both of these are 11 by 17. I'm going to use the giraffe, as I said, as a rebellious move, because Canvas is giving us such a hard time. And you can find this giraffe on Unsplash. So now what you can do is you can obviously go in and select it and then have nothing back there, right? So that's one option. Nothing means it's going to be transparent. Another thing you can do is go in Layer, New Fill Layer, and choose that you want a gradient. In this particular exercise, in that example I showed you at the beginning of the top model, do you remember that I said there is obviously a gradient in there? There's a blue color at the top and a yellow in the bottom. So another thing you can do here is you can say, okay, I'm going to go with the gradient. And it's telling you want to fill gradient so and so, and I'm going to call it back. I'm not going to call it background, because you remember Photoshop comes with a layer called background, and I don't want to duplicate it. So I'm going to just say back or gradient. Let's call it gradient since there's going to be a gradient. And I'm going to say okay. This shows up, and by default it does this weird, interesting effect that it kind of, because it's on the gradient that goes from white to transparent. But what I really want is more a color. So these are already pre-made for you. You could obviously click on here and bring in some more, but I'm going to just use what we have. So let's go with more like greens and blues, because that's what the top model had. So I'm going to open it, and you can see that there's a whole lot of choices, right? I can choose among these. Maybe this one is kind of closest, right there. And I'm going to say, okay. So you wonder, what happened, Enrica? Where's my giraffe? It's on the bottom layer, right? I just created basically a gradient background layer. Now if I move my giraffe up, everything is golden, or actually the gradient down will be better. Now let me unlock it. Actually, that's my problem. I haven't unlocked the background yet. Now it's going to let me do it. So obviously now, if I mask out the background of the giraffe, the savanna, now I can see the giraffe against this beautiful, fill gradient I just created. Is everybody with me? So how do I mask it out? I'm going to do a fairly quick and dirty selection here, and you forgive me for that. But I'm going to use that magnetic lasso tool that I was telling you about. Magnetic lasso, as you remember, works based on contrast between two colors. So up here should be really easy. I'm going to just kind of go around and see if it staying fairly closely to my edge. It would have been really smart to zoom in, but I haven't because you know how it goes. I kind of felt like, let's see if I can wing it and do it without zooming in and out too much. Uh-oh, here's going to get lost though. Shoot. The legs are not contrasting enough. That's okay. You know, we can fix it. Can you scream to me? I mean scream because I want to screaming it in a good way, like sing it with melody and passion. What tool do I need to fix these mistakes? What is the tool that will save me? Try. I never bite. I never get disappointed. I mean, sometimes, but not with you guys. Don't worry. All right, obviously we have some problems in here, right? So what is the fix? How do I get this part to be added to the giraffe? How do I refine a selection? Yes. What? The paintbrush? Yes. And what's the name of it? Wait. Tess and Taz. Taz. What do you say?
Selected mask.
It's called something slightly different. I think both of you, it's called quick mask. And why is it easy? Is important to remember because it's Q. You hit Q and you got in there, right? So easy to remember, quick mask Q. You were right though. You're not really using the paintbrush itself unless you hit Q though. Because if you don't hit Q and you go in with a paintbrush, you're just painting, right? But I knew you knew that. Thank you for answering. I appreciate it. So now I have black and white, even though my screen is cropped out. So I don't know if I have black and white. It's really sad. Means if I have black or white in the foreground. So let me try. Means I have to kind of wing it. Yeah, actually I have the right color. That's perfect. So right now I'm adding to my selection, right? And I'm holding the space bar to scroll. Again, I'm not going to do a masterpiece job. I'm going to do a very quick, rough job. But I'm going to go in and kind of do a, decent job. Something that I'm not completely ashamed of. Like you can make the paintbrush bigger or smaller using the square bracket. You know that, right? And here it's kind of a little bit messy. These legs and the tail. So the messy part is that eventually you have to subtract. That means the stuff that is in the middle actually should be red. So eventually you have to switch the two colors, the black and white. Again, sorry that in my screen we cannot even see them because the projection basically crops part of my screen. The fact that I'm hooked to a projector makes it a little bit more challenging, but hey, nobody's gonna stop us now, right? I just switched. I had X switches. Look how cool it is, guys, to know shortcuts, right? Right now I cannot tell if I have black or white because my screen is cropped, but I know that if I hit X, it will go to the one that I don't have. So when I need the other one, I just hit X and it swaps. Does that make sense? So the X shortcut swaps the foreground color and the background color. So if in the foreground I had white and then I say, oh wait, now I need the black, I cannot go and choose it because those tools are not in my reach because of the projection. But if I hit X, life is good. The power of knowing shortcuts. I love them. I always bug my student. I want them to know them all. But you see, there is a reason for it, right? I've been kind of playing with these software for 20 years. I know that it matters. All right, especially when you're in a pickle like this. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to hit X again and add the tail and the top, and then X again to mask out this center part. But obviously, I need to do Command plus to zoom in so I can see what I'm doing. Too big of a brush for this tiny little point. All right. All right, so getting better, right? I mean, not perfect, but getting closer to perfection. As I said, sometimes though, the beginning, you do quick mock-ups. So you don't really aim for perfection. You aim for roughly there. Then if you really love it, you can always go in and edit it. And if you wonder what I mean, is right now, I'm going to hit Q again, so I can see my giraffe is selected. And if I want to mask out the savannah in the back, you guys all know the mask tool, right? You hit down here, and life is good. Now you see your beautiful, fill layer in the background. And now, let's say I want to bring in other elements like, the flower. I want I know you don't have it, and I'm sorry about that, but I want that broken up, that flower that seems to be in two pieces. I guess you could do the same thing, extrapolate the rows. So what can we do? We can actually open up the rows in Photoshop. And you can also open up, there was one that was really easy. Oh, this one. Really easy. Remember when you're selecting stuff, it's kind of smart if you think about, okay, let me grab the ones that are kind of easy to select. This one obviously is no brainer. So what you can do is Command A, Command Copy. Remember though, if you want to scale it, if you want to do a lot of scaling instead of Command C and Command V, you want to always do File Place instead, because that creates a smart object. That means it will protect your image. So when you scale it up and down, it always remembers the beginning, the percentage of when you brought it. Let's say you bring it in at 100%, you scale it down a whole lot with like the transformation tool with Command T. And if you scale it to 20%, and then you have to bring it back to 80, if you did Command Copy, Command Paste, it's going to be grainy. But if you have it as a smart object, it's going to be perfect, right? So remember what I taught you in 182. And if for the people that didn't take it with me, if it's a little bit unclear, let me know. In this case, we're not going to scale much, or maybe for scaling, we're going to be scaling in small version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this one in the back. I'm going to scale it, Command T, down a bit. I'm going to rotate it a little bit so that I see the giraffe kind of surrounded by the flower, and even a little bit more. I told you I was going to scale it a whole lot right there. And then what I might want to do is I might want to go and grab this rose. So how do I do that? Again, zoom in and do a Command A, Command C, bring it into the giraffe because I don't want to get rid of any. Remember, Enrica is obsessed with trying not to destroy anything. This is a really large image. I should have done image size, but no biggie. I'm going to just make it a bit smaller, and then I'm going to try to have the flower by the giraffe's ear, right, up there. So, it's eventually going to be up here somehow. Or maybe down here. I have no idea. My point is, depending what you want to achieve, you'll have a design. You're not going to be fumbling like I'm doing right now. You're hopefully going to have something that feels like a real design. You see, I'm scaling it back up now and it's getting grainy. I did not know really what I wanted to do. I should have thought about it. All right, I'm going to go in with the magic wand this time, and I'm going to grab that gray. It's not doing that great of a job. Let me change the tolerance. Ooh, it's only 8. It's generally 32. That might be the problem. Yeah, much better now. Let's actually go 50. Command D. Boom. It's getting a lot better. And now, again, I can go in and hit Q, get rid of the arm. You get the picture, right? If I want only the flower. So the idea here is you know what to do with Photoshop to bring images in and to mask out what you don't want. So what about the Illustrator or the vector? Sorry, here I would have to go really nice and big and get rid of all of it so that all I have is the flower. And then I do my mask. So what about the vector? So what they did in selecting verse, it looks like I had the background but not the, and then I go in here and obviously create a mask once again. Boom. Again, nothing spectacular, but hey, that's fine. I mean, I didn't do that great of a job, but that's okay for now. And then I can obviously go in and say, okay, let me grab some of those twigs, the blue twigs. Okay. I did not ask you to export the clipboard, though. Sorry. You can grab some of these branches and do the same thing. You know, say, okay, great, I'm going to Command A, Command C. It's probably pretty big, though. This time I'm going to learn from my mistake of before that I didn't check the size. Yeah, it's pretty big. I think we are at 150. This is 19 inches. That is crazy. I'm going to actually go at more like 8 inches. Command A, Command C, and then I bring it into my giraffe. You get kind of the picture. Now, what did they do with the vector? So here is my little branch. Again, I can use the magic wand to select the background and then select inverse, mask it, and there we are. And I can obviously make as many as I want, some of which might actually be in the front, and et cetera, et cetera. So you can see that it's shaping up and start looking more like this, right? Now, what if I want to change the color of the branches to red? Does anybody know how to do that? Does anybody have a clue about that? Yes. How do you do it?
Like layer of
Effects? No.
where you
Maybe you can teach me something new, by the way. And not because I wouldn't do it with effects, but how do you do it with effects? Every time, though, remember, guys, every time you have to deal with colors, your best friend is generally image adjustment colors, or even better, right here,
yeah, that's what I was trying to.
it's called adjustment layers.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I'm glad we're on the same page. So you go under hue and saturation and adjustment layer, and you see this weird interface here appears, and that allows you to pretty much decide what you want to do with that color. You can say, hey, look, I actually want it to be a little bit more. Oh, oops. What's going on, though? It's changing everything. Why is that? Yes.
Because it's not linked to the specific layer.
How do you link it to the specific layer?
Drag it up.
So what you do instead is you apply it, you want to apply to the branch, right? So what you want to do is you want to go and select the branch. Command click on the branch. So you're loading that selection. So if you have a selection loaded, when you do your adjustment layer, it will target only what is in the selection. So when you command click on your mask, it will load the selection. Then you go down here and say hue and saturation. And now when you make changes, yeah, it changes also, sorry, in that branch, there's also that sheet that I didn't mask well. Obviously, I'm not doing that good of a job in selecting. But you can see that it's only affecting this stuff, right? The stuff that is related to that. Now, I don't really like it that it's affecting the page. So how do I fix it? Does anybody know? Look at this mask. So the problem we have in this mask is not only the little branch is included, but all that white stuff is included. I was going to say CRAP, but let's not say that. So how do I do it? How do I change that?
You can use the brush tool to get rid of the white space.
To edit the mask, right? So you target that mask, choose the brush tool, and right now I don't know if I have black or white because I cannot see it here, but let's see what I do. Yeah, I have the right color. I have black, obviously I need black. So I go in and just paint all where there are stuff that I don't want it to be included. Boom. Life is gold. Isn't that sweet? I basically go and edit my mask. Like down here, the one of the flower here, there is some problem because I still see the hand, right? That is not good. So I do the same thing. I go down there and I paint in black, but because I'm painting on the mask, I'm simply removing from the selection. So for example, if you wanted this rose to be a different color, you again command click on the rose, and then you say, okay, I'm going to put an adjustment layer on top right now, or a huge and saturation, and I'm going to make that rose more like a green color or a purple color. And I'm going to bump up the saturation, or you can kind of make it whatever you want it to be. And again, even in there, I have some kind of like artifacts that I forgot to get rid of. Didn't do the greatest selection. But we're starting to see things are getting better. Now, what I'm not too stoked about is the giraffe is not, I'm afraid that it needs a little bit of levels, right? If I do Command L, do you guys see the spectrum? What does the spectrum tells me? I selected the giraffe layer and I did Command L. What does that tells me if you look at it? Is there any problem? What does levels tells you guys? Levels tell, oh yeah, Tess, you want to say it? Or no, you were just scratching, sorry. Brandon wants to say it. He's itching for it. Go for it. Okay. This is a review, guys. I understand. I think you know it. I can see your gear spinning. Try. I don't ever get upset.
Doesn't levels tell you like where the lightest?
What it says is Photoshop default are white and black. This image, dark and light, do not align with white and black, and that's generally fine because you don't want stark black and stark white. But what it also is telling you here is that this is missed. So for example, this is my image, and it starts about here. So if I grab this lighter and tuck it in, I'm basically telling Photoshop the darkest color in my image is the equivalent of your default dark. That, you know what I mean? You're aligning the Photoshop defaults with the dark and the light in your image. You can also tweak the midtones right here, right? I didn't like that the giraffe looked a little bit washed out, so you can go in and make it darker or lighter. So the levels allows you to do that. Now, though, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? I did it through Command L, that is the equivalent of going in image adjustment. Everything you do through this is permanent. So whatever I did, it's not if I go to the client says, hey, can you lighten up that giraffe, or bring it back to the beginning? Not gonna happen. I lost it. Not cool, huh? I'm not cool. So let me fix it. So I just did Command Z. Let me be cool now. And I'm gonna go in here again. Oh, wait. I need to obviously first select the giraffe, or it's going to apply to everything. Command click on the giraffe mask. Then go in here, in here, and choose again, this time, levels. And do the same thing I did before, but now whenever I go in and make changes, actually I didn't really undo everything. But I can go in and kind of make changes to my giraffe, and it's going to always be something I can go back to and tweak in a click, basically. Like if I lose it and I go to something else and I want it back, I just go onto this and I double click and it shows up right here. So that's kind of the way. So what else did the exercise ask? So obviously you can go in and create a shape. Right here there are all kind of shapes. I can say I'm going to make a triangle right now. And remember how vector works, right? You can have it as a path, as a shape. These are the two vector options you have. So just for fun, I don't unfortunately know which colors I have in the foreground and background because, again, they're cut out. But you could go in and create like a big triangle that has, actually, let me do this. Let me choose a shape. So I hopefully can see the colors up here. Again, I'm a little bit having trouble with the fact that my color stuff is kind of cropped up. There we are. So here I can say that I actually do not want to fill right here, but I do want a stroke, and I want my stroke to be a certain amount of pixels, and I want it to be a certain color. You might say I want it to be this kind of shade of green. Oops, yeah. So then I can go in and say, okay, now I'm going to kind of rotate it maybe, Command T, and squish it. And maybe part of it make it look like it belongs to the background of the giraffe, right? By editing, kind of removing part of it with a mask or not. My point is, you can create a custom shape that you can even maybe move to the bottom. So it's in the background right there. And that would fulfill the requirement, right? You have to have one vector that is a shape. And then you have to have text. Now, text you need to add in Illustrator. Now, to spice up the image, because I'm an ambitious kind, I'm going to actually use a text that is a sketch that I did, that I'm going to go in Illustrator and trace it. So that, what does it mean though? It means that let's say I'm done with my composite here. So I'm going to save it, Command S, I should have saved it before. And I'm going to call it bitmap, even though actually the triangle is vector. So I'm going to say composite. So I'm going to call it composite PSD. I'm going to say save. So now I have it saved. I'm going to say command, make sure is I could have put a lot more branches, a lot more stuff. But the next step is to actually launch Illustrator and bring in this image and obviously do that text, trace that text in with a pen tool. So kind of that's how you do this exercise, without considering the design. Right now I'm showing you the techniques, the implementation. As you can see, is a bit a review of what we did last class more than anything, right? It's not super complicated, I hope. Oops, new file. Come on. Now we know that we want it to be 11 by 17. I forgot exact measures, but I believe is 11 by 17 tall. I say okay. And now I'm going to do file place. Now, this is why I got all the way to here, and then I'm going to stop. I promise I'm going to stop talking. If you want to bring in your image, you can hit place. Remember, the default is link. So actually, let me go in my desktop and choose tutorial 1 or whatever I created that folder at the beginning of this class, whatever the name is. I already forgot right here. So I'm going to go in here and look for composite. Now, pay attention, because if this is checked, that means link. What does it mean? If you leave that checkbox there, what does it mean? What can be the potential problem we're going to run into? What does link means? Come on, guys, you all know it. Give it a try. Think of a link like a chain that is hooked to something far away, right? That whatever image you bring in, yes?
Like if you had the original image, then it just iterates at the original.
It means that when you're bringing this in, it doesn't live inside of Illustrator, but it lives at the end of a long chain that is, for example, on the desktop. So whenever you do that, if you then turn it into me, that file is going to be left behind in your desktop, and all you're turning in is the Illustrator file. But when I open it, it's going to tell me broken link, that I cannot find the image. So uncheck it if you can and hit place. Boom. It's actually a tiny bit bigger. I told you that I forgot this exact size. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer right here. I'm going to lock this one. And I'm going to do the same exact thing, but this time what I'm going to place is the sketch that I'm going to trace in a minute. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make it maybe a little bit smaller, but at the end, and this one eventually will go away, actually, this sketch. I'm going to eventually delete it. So how do I deal with that? So one way to go is make it into a template. So choose template it. What it does is it make it low opacity, and then you obviously need to create another layer on top where you go with a pen tool and trace this. And once it's done tracing, you can simply get rid of that, and you'll have that beautiful text right in here, right? My point is, this is kind of how you do this composition, with the difference that instead of using a giraffe and a triangle and a bunch of twigs, you are trying to depict fear. So you have images that are more like that. But another thing I want to show you, the last piece, is when it's time to make it into 2 different colors, how do I do that? Remember, you could say, okay, let me give Enrica another version. So I'm going to say File, Save As, and I'm going to composite 1. So I keep the original always, but once I go in here, I'm going to say flatten all the layers, flatten image, right? So now I've flattened my image completely. And I go in here again, and I'm going to say hue and saturation. And when I do that, I can pretty much go in there and start messing with the color right here, from desaturating to changing the color completely. Sometimes what it really helps, sorry, I cannot really move it, that is frustrating, You can go in presets and you find yellow boost, strong saturation, sepia. You know, it can even give you different options, red boost. Or you can say, hey, look, the stuff I want to change is not the master, but I just want to change all the yellow. And you target the yellow and you make the yellow blue or whatever it is. So one way to go at a certain point, or actually let's choose the blue since we have the blue twig. That's a kind of good one to tinker with. So you see the blue twig is what I targeted, and sure enough, I made it green just by sliding my slider around. So later on, if you want to, you could flatten it, or you could actually maybe not flatten it, so you can kind of tweak the colors of individual pieces. So I might go in here and hit revert. So now I have all my layers back. Then I can say, okay, I'm going to go with the giraffe right now, this layer, and I'm going to do another hue and saturation. Is this a hue and saturation? No, it's a levels. I thought so. Sorry. Sometimes it's hard to remember. But I'm going to command click, so I have the giraffe loaded up. So I'm going to go in here and say hue and saturation. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to make the giraffe like kind of a nice, interesting bluish color or whatever. You know what I mean? You can go in. Perfect. I love the purple giraffe. And then I might go in and say that I want the twig a completely different color. Let me actually go in the hue and saturation of the twig, maybe that is. Yeah, that is the hue and saturation of the, you know what I mean? That you can go in and kind of finagle with the colors by playing with hue and saturation if you want. That's kind of a quickie way to do it. So anyway, and so at that point you'll have this again into Illustrator with your beautiful text, and you can just, you know, okay, let's say you are done in Illustrator. Let me jump back in Illustrator. How do you turn it in as a JPEG? Remember, File, Save for Web, Export, Save for Web. And here, if you go under 2 up, the first one is always the original. The second one right now is a PNG. But you can go in here and say, I'm going to make it into a JPEG. And boom, now you say save, and it's done, and you can turn it in or embed it into your PDF and then turn it in. But that's kind of the last step, is eventually when you're done, no matter if it's in Photoshop or in Illustrator, because Photoshop has it as well, you can also, you know, go in Photoshop and say, if you ever will need it, File, Export, Save for Web, and you have the same situation, but this time you have 4 different options in there. You know, 4 different views. You could check if it's JPEG or if you want a PNG and see which one is bigger or smaller. We have this class we have a whole module on this. It's called image optimization. I wanted to do it last class, but I didn't. That means later on this quarter, we talk about what does really PNG means, what does JPEG means, and how does that optimization works behind the scene. All right, I'm going to stop the recording and ask if you have questions.